From Los Angeles, civil rights attorney and the host of the LeoTerrell podcast, LeoTerrell. Leo, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. My pleasure, Stephanie. Glad to be here.
The video that we just watched it was released by the Daily Mail, never before seen. And again, hard to watch. It's just such a tragedy all around. But what we're seeing in there was him resisting arrest. Does this change anything?
You know, Stephanie, I think it helps the officers, the other officers, not the officer who knelt on George Floyd, because they were following procedures. As a lawyer, they were following protocol. They had a suspect and they were trying to place him in the car. He resisted arrest. That's a fact. There was no excessive use of force while they tried to put him in the car. He resisted. And I think it goes to help the other three officers who's accused of conspiring with George Chauvin.
Why do you think this video was withheld, and why did it have to be leaked?
For some reason, I think it was held at the detriment of the officers, the other officers who are being charged. Let me be very clear. I think the Attorney General overcharged this case. Second-degree murder, I don't see it. I see voluntary manslaughter. And I think this tape helps the officers because the officers were following police procedure. To me, they did nothing wrong. George Floyd was resisting arrest. That's shown on the tape.
And in the video, we hear Floyd repeatedly telling officers as he's claustrophobic and has anxiety as he's resisting being put into the car. What is an officer supposed to do when someone says that? Does that make a difference?
Let me tell you, Stephanie, officers hear a lot from suspected criminals. And George Floyd was being arrested. And these officers were going to follow procedure, police procedures. And they did not witness any type of conduct on the part of George Floyd that would prevent him from going in the car, other than the fact that he didn't want to go. George Floyd was resisting going inside that car. And the police officers need to place him in the car to arrest him and take him to the police station. So they were following protocol.
And ultimately what happened to George Floyd should never happen again. That is the knee on neck and everything that we saw in that tragic video. Which brings me to the protest following the death of George Floyd. And we've seen an increase in crime in cities across the country, including Minneapolis. They've seen about nearly double the amount of homicides in over the last year. Obviously, we've seen a spike in crime, too, since the George Floyd protests. And you have to wonder why this is happening. We have the anti-police sentiment happening in the country. We have city councils and local officials cracking down on police departments, kind of changing the rules. Now there's an effort to defund police. What do you make of this spike in crime in cities like Minneapolis?
Thank you for the question. I'm livid. First of all, let me separate the George Floyd situation. It is a situation that was horrible. He should not have died, and those officers will see their day in court. But Stephanie, what's going on in these Democratic cities is outrageous. The Democratic cities and their mayors have allowed criminals to destroy property and to take lives and to injure police. Black Lives Matter to me is a farce, and in conjunction with the extremist groups, they have hijacked the Democratic Party. The result, you see a lot of crime going on in these Democratic cities, and they're saying nothing, absolutely nothing. Defunding the police is ludicrous. I have family members in law enforcement. They protect us 24/7. And what they're using as a George Floyd situation as an excuse, I don't buy it, and the majority of America does not buy it. Luckily for this country, Donald Trump is trying to instill law and order in these wrecked Democratic cities.
Want to see more videos?
So when you're walking, you need to look behind. Yeah, and I've talked to several reporters that have been on the ground at some of these protests, and they said the whole idea that these protests are all about George Floyd is just fiction. It's a myth. No one's really talking about George Floyd out there. It's turned into something else. And as for Minneapolis, the police department released robbery prevention tips, and I'm going to read 3 of the ones that stood out to me. Don't walk alone. So you're not allowed to walk alone in your own city because you're at risk now. Be hyper aware of your surroundings. So when you're walking, you need to look behind you, look to the side, be hyper aware. Now, if a robber does confront you, do as they say. So now you just have to follow a robber's, criminal's orders, which is just terrifying. I've been the victim of a robbery, and ever since that day, I've never been the same. This happened to me in Washington, D.C. And to think that the police department is releasing these, and it's true. If somebody wants your stuff, it's not worth your life. But we've gotten to this point where police departments are releasing these little tips on how to stay safe in your own city. Do you want to live in a city like this? I want to live in a place where there's law and order.
Because absolutely not. And every criminal in this country will be going to Minneapolis because the Democratic City Council have given criminals a green light to commit crimes. And it's just crazy because, again, these are Democratic-run cities, and they're allowing the criminals to take over the city. They have given no support. Not a single Democratic mayor have given any support to the police department. And they're now trying to terrorize the police chief in Minneapolis and in the other cities. It's just gone bonkers. And what's amazing is that there is total silence on the Democratic Party from Joe Biden all the way down. No one is saying a single word because the Democratic Party has been hijacked by Antifa and Black Lives.
Well, and it's kind of convenient that a lot of the people who make these decisions have private security and they live behind gates. So it's stuff that they don't have to worry about, unlike us regular people that might have to walk to work or, don't have the private security. Just for our audience, I want them to know you are a former Democrat. You're a lifelong Democrat, and you recently came out in support of President Trump. We've recently heard you, fight back against Black Lives Matter. I mean, This is stuff I never thought I'd ever hear you say because I've been following you for quite some time and I've heard a lot about what you have to say, and there's a lot of things I disagree with you on and a lot of things lately that I agree with you on.
I want every one of your viewers to hear me out very clearly. I have been a lifelong liberal on the Democratic side. I have never, ever voted for a Republican in my entire life. I'm a civil rights attorney. I left the Democratic Party this year very simply for two reasons. One, when Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. That was insulting and condescending. Secondly, defunding the police. I will be voting for Donald Trump this year because he is the best candidate, the only candidate, and I have left the Democratic Party. I don't care what they think of me. I'm voting for the best candidate. I want to preserve our institution and the American way of life, and the Democratic Party have left me.
Well, Leo, I hope more people will wake up because you're right. You're spot on with everything. We're going to have to leave it here. We appreciate your insight.
Want to see more?